My mother called me manipulative into a microphone. On my birthday, 50 people were sitting in rows, like a courtroom. My brother stood beside her, holding a printed list. 35 years of my life, reduced to bullet points. My sister-in-law had her phone up, recording everything. And my boss was sitting in the second row, watching, judging, taking it all in. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I didn't even move. Because while they were busy preparing their speeches, I had already been preparing something else for 67 days. And what happened in the next 10 minutes didn't just stop the intervention. It ended 6 relationships in that room, 1 marriage, 1 reputation, and the illusion of a perfect family that had been carefully protected for decades. But here's the part no one talks about, the part I haven't told anyone. There was one recording I almost didn't play, and if I had pressed that button one more time, everything would have ended very differently. Before I take you there, if you've ever been the one holding your family together while quietly falling apart, go ahead and subscribe. Not for me, but so you don't miss the stories that remind you you're not alone. Now let me ask you something. If your own family turned your birthday into a public trial, would you stay silent, or would you make sure the truth is louder than them? Because that night, I didn't raise my voice, I just pressed play, and I promise you, what they said about me was nothing compared to what I had on them. My name is Linda. I'm 35 years old. I work as a senior accountant in a mid-sized firm just outside Des Moines. It's not glamorous work. Numbers don't clap for you. Spreadsheets don't thank you. But they do one thing very well. They tell the truth. At least, they're supposed to. For the past 9 years, I've been telling myself a story that everything I was doing was love. Every dollar I sent, every weekend I gave up, every time I said it's okay when it wasn't, I told myself, this is what family does. Family shows up. Family sacrifices. Family takes care of each other. What I didn't realize was that in my family, taking care of each other only flowed in one direction, mine. Every month on the 1st, I would sit at my kitchen table, open my laptop, and start the routine. Mortgage payment for my parents' house, $1,200. My father had retired early after his back started bothering him. My mother said they were struggling, so I stepped in. Then came my brother Daniel. He had always been between opportunities. That's what my mother called it. What it really meant was that he never kept a job longer than 6 months. I covered his credit card, $300 here, $500 there, sometimes more. Then there was my niece Ava. She's 8, bright kid, sweet, loves drawing horses and asking questions no one else has the patience to answer. Her school tuition came out of my account too, $600 a month, just until Daniel gets back on his feet, my mother said. That was 4 years ago. Groceries, medical bills, car repairs, unexpected emergencies that always seemed to arrive right after my paycheck did. By the time I finished transferring everything, I was left with just enough to cover my rent, my gas, and a life that got smaller every year. My apartment has 1 bedroom, secondhand furniture, a couch that sinks a little too much in the middle. I haven't taken a real vacation in over 7 years. Not because I couldn't, because there was always something more important. At least, that's what I believed. Sunday dinners were the one constant. Every week, 4 o'clock, my parents' house. I'd arrive early. Of course I did. Help my mother in the kitchen. Set the table. Wash whatever dishes were left from the night before. By the time everyone sat down, I had already been working for an hour. My brother would show up late, usually with a story, traffic, work, something vague, something no one questioned. My mother would smile at him like he'd just returned from war. "Daniel, you made it," she'd say, like it was an accomplishment. I'd be standing right there, holding a serving dish, and no one would even look at me. No hug, no thank you, just expectation. That's the word I've come to understand. Not appreciation, expectation. One Sunday, I remember it clearly. I told them I had been promoted, senior accountant, more responsibility, more hours. It mattered to me. I waited for the moment. You know that small pause in conversation, where you think, This is where I say it. I got promoted last week, I said. My mother didn't even look up from the stove. That's nice, honey, she replied. Can you grab the plates? That was it. No questions. No pride. No celebration. Just another task. Daniel walked in 15 minutes later, holding a $6 bottle of wine. My mother lit up. Oh, you didn't have to bring anything, she said, while taking it from his hands, like it was something rare and precious. I stood there, with clean plates in my hands, and realized something I didn't have the words for yet. In that house, effort didn't matter, only perception did. And Daniel was always the hero of a story no one bothered to fact-check. I should have seen it then. The imbalance, the quiet resentment building under the surface, the way every conversation bent itself around him and past me. But I didn't, because when you spend years telling yourself a story, you don't question it. You protect it. You defend it. You live inside it. Until one day, you hear something you were never meant to hear. And suddenly, every number you've been adding up in your life stops making sense. That moment came on a Tuesday night, and it didn't just change how I saw my family. It changed everything. It was a Tuesday evening, nothing special about it. I had just left the office a little later than usual. Quarter-end reports, numbers that didn't quite line up. The kind of problem I was trained to fix. I drove straight to my parents' house. I had left my jacket there on Sunday. It was getting colder, and I didn't feel like buying another one. The porch light was on. The back door was unlocked. It always was. I stepped inside quietly, not because I was trying to listen, but because the house felt different. Voices, low, focused. My mother and Daniel. I was about to call out, say something casual. Hey, it's just me. But then I heard my name, and everything stopped. We do it on her birthday, my mother said. Her voice was calm, organized, the same voice she used when planning church events. We sit her down. Everyone's already invited. I didn't move. My hand stayed on the edge of the doorframe. Daniel let out a short laugh. She's not going to take that well. She doesn't have a choice, my mother replied. There was a pause. Then she said it. She needs to hear the truth about herself. My chest tightened. A strange feeling. Not panic. Not yet. Just something shifting. Daniel asked, "What exactly are we saying?" And my mother answered, clearly, slowly, like she had rehearsed it, that she's controlling, that she uses money to manipulate us, that she makes everyone feel like they owe her. Each word landed, like something being carved into stone. I stood there, hearing my entire identity, rewritten in real time. Daniel exhaled. Yeah, that sounds about right. About right. I almost laughed, but nothing about this was funny. We need people there, my mother continued. Not just family, friends, neighbors. There was a slight shift in her tone. Careful, strategic. The more people see it, the more she'll understand. Understand what? That I was the villain. Daniel said, "Should we record it?" A beat. Then my mother laughed softly. I was hoping you'd suggest that. My stomach dropped. She needs to see herself the way everyone else sees her, my mother said. And honestly, content like that does well online. Content. That word echoed in my head. Content. Like this was a performance, like I was something to be edited and posted. Daniel added, what if she freaks out? Stops paying for everything? That question hung in the air. For a second, I almost hoped maybe that would stop them. Maybe that would make them think. But my mother didn't hesitate. She won't, she said. Absolute. Certain. She's been doing this for years. She didn't stop when we forgot her birthday. She didn't stop when you lost your job. She didn't stop when we asked for more. Her voice lowered slightly. Confident. She's not going anywhere. I felt something inside me go very still. Not broken, not emotional. Just quiet, like a room after the lights go out. Daniel chuckled. So basically, she's trapped. And my mother replied, yes. That was the moment. Not when they planned it. Not when they insulted me. Not even when they decided to record it. It was that word, trapped. That's when I understood. This wasn't concern. This wasn't love. This was control. I stepped back, slowly, carefully. Every instinct told me to walk in there, to confront them, to demand an explanation. But something else, something quieter, held me in place. I left without making a sound, got in my car, closed the door, and just sat there, hands on the steering wheel, breathing, trying to understand how I had gone from daughter to problem to content. I didn't cry, not then, because the truth was, I wasn't surprised, not completely. There had been signs, moments, things I chose not to question. But now, I couldn't unhear it. I couldn't go back to the version of my life where everything made sense. I reached for my phone, opened it, stared at the screen, and for the first time, I didn't think about how to fix things. I thought about something else, something I had never allowed myself to consider before. What if I stopped being the person they expected me to be? That thought didn't feel loud. It didn't feel dramatic. It felt dangerous. I started the engine, drove home, and that night, instead of trying to understand them, I made a decision. If they were planning a performance, then I needed to know exactly what kind of story they thought they were telling, and more importantly, what they were trying to hide. The next Sunday, I showed up exactly the same way I always did. 4 o'clock, early, quiet, predictable. If anyone had looked closely, really closely, they might have noticed something different. Not in what I said, not in how I moved, but in what I was no longer feeling. I wasn't trying to earn anything anymore. Not approval, not gratitude, not even peace. I walked into that house with a purpose I had never carried before. I was there to listen. My phone sat in my coat pocket, screen dark, recorder on. Simple, nothing dramatic, just a quiet decision to stop guessing and start knowing. Dinner went as usual. My mother talked about church. Daniel talked about a new opportunity, something vague, something promising, something I knew would disappear in a few weeks. I nodded when expected, smiled when appropriate, played my role, but inside, I was paying attention, not to what they said directly to me, but to everything around it, the tone, the pauses, the things that didn't quite match. After dinner, I stood at the sink, warm water running over my hands, the rhythm familiar, comforting almost. That's when I heard my mother's voice, from the hallway, soft, lower than usual. She was on the phone. "I don't know how much longer we can keep this up," she said. A pause. Then she continued. She's starting to ask more questions. My hand slowed, just slightly. Of course she pays everything, my mother added. That's what she does. Another pause. Then, no, she doesn't know about the extra account. The extra account. The words landed quietly, but they stayed. What matters is she keeps sending the money, my mother said. That's the important part. I turned off the water, dried my hands slowly. My phone stayed in my pocket, recording every word. I didn't step into the hallway. I didn't interrupt, because something had shifted. Before, I would have needed clarity, an explanation. Now, I just needed the truth, and the truth was starting to speak for itself. That night, I went home and listened to the recording. Once, then again. Each time, I heard something new. Not just the words, but the certainty in her voice. The assumption that I wouldn't question anything. That I wouldn't stop. That I couldn't. The next week, I did the same thing. Showed up, smiled, listened. Recorded. Patterns started forming. Small things at first. Daniel asking for money, before explaining why. My mother answering for him, before I could respond. Decisions being made about my money, without ever including me in the conversation. And then, one evening, something bigger surfaced. I arrived earlier than usual. The house was quiet, too quiet. I stepped inside, called out once. No answer. Then I heard movement. From the garage. The side door was slightly open. Voices again. This time, my father and Daniel. I moved closer. Not enough to be seen. Just enough to hear. "I told you to be more careful," my father said. His voice was tense, lower than I had ever heard it. Daniel replied quickly. "I am careful." "You're spending too fast," my father snapped. "You think she's not going to notice." "Notice what?" My pulse picked up. She doesn't check details, Daniel said. Confident, dismissive, she just sends the money. There it was again. That assumption, that certainty. My father exhaled sharply. That account isn't invisible forever, he said. You keep moving money like this, it's going to come back on us. A long pause. Then Daniel said something that changed everything. She owes us anyway. I felt that one. Not in my head, not in my chest. Deeper. She's always acted like she's better than us, he continued. This just evens things out. Evens things out. I stood there, listening to my own life, being justified as something they were entitled to take from. Not ask, not borrow. Take. My phone was still recording. Steady. Unbothered. Unlike me. But even then, I didn't walk in. I didn't confront them. Because by that point, I understood something I hadn't understood before. This wasn't one conversation. This wasn't one misunderstanding. This was a system. A quiet, well-practiced system. And I had just started to see the edges of it. I stepped back, left the house the same way I came in. Unnoticed, unquestioned, invisible, but not unaware anymore. That night, I didn't just listen to the recordings. I labeled them, dated them, saved them. Not because I had a plan, not yet, but because something inside me, the part that had spent years explaining things away, was finally done explaining. And something else was taking its place. Something quieter, stronger, patient. I had 2 recordings now, and a birthday coming. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of what was going to happen. I was curious, because whatever they thought they were planning, they had no idea how much of the truth was already in my hands. The first recording should have been enough. For most people, it would have been. Proof that something wasn't right. Proof that maybe they were being taken advantage of. But for me, it didn't feel like proof. It felt like the beginning of something much bigger. Because once you hear the truth once, you start listening differently. The next Sunday, I showed up like nothing had changed. Same time, same routine, same quiet version of myself they were used to. But inside, everything had changed. I wasn't there to help anymore. I wasn't there to belong. I was there to understand. My phone sat in my pocket, recording again. I didn't even check if it was still working. I just assumed it was. Because at that point, it wasn't about technology. It was about attention. And for the first time in years, I was paying attention to everything. Dinner was normal, too normal. My mother laughed more than usual. Daniel talked louder, like he was performing confidence instead of actually feeling it. I watched, listened, waited. After dinner, I carried plates to the kitchen. Water running, silverware clinking, familiar sounds. Safe sounds, but safety is often just silence wearing a mask. That's when my father walked in. He thought I was alone. He didn't see my phone on the counter. Didn't know it was still recording. He opened a drawer, pulled something out. A small envelope, worn edges. He flipped through it quickly. Bills. Cash. I could hear it. The dry, papery sound. Then he muttered something under his breath. Not enough. Just 2 words. But they didn't belong in a house I was supposedly supporting. He picked up his phone. Dialed. I kept my back turned, hands moving slowly in the sink. Listening. Yeah. I'll need a few more days, he said. Pause. No, she doesn't know. Another pause. I told you she doesn't check. That phrase again. Doesn't check. Like I was a system, not a person. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not anger. Not yet. Just clarity. The kind that doesn't rush. The kind that waits. I turned off the water, dried my hands, turned around slowly. He ended the call immediately. Too quickly, like a reflex. Hey, he said. Casual. Almost normal. You're done already. I nodded. Yeah. We stood there for a second. A small, awkward pause. The kind that used to make me uncomfortable. But not anymore. Now, I recognized it. It was the space where truth had almost been exposed, but wasn't. Not yet. That night, I went home and listened again. Not just to my mother. Not just to Daniel. Now, to my father. 3 voices. 3 different stories. But all pointing to the same thing. Something wasn't just wrong. It was coordinated. The following week, I arrived even earlier, 10 minutes before my usual time. The front door was locked, so I went around back. The kitchen window was slightly open. Just enough. Voices drifted out. My mother, and someone else. My Aunt Carol. I recognized her voice instantly. Soft, careful, always sounding like she was saying something she shouldn't. I moved it already, my mother said. Calm, controlled, into my personal account. My heart slowed. Not sped up, slowed, because I knew this mattered. Carol asked, "What about Linda?" My name again. Always said like a variable, something to be managed. My mother let out a small laugh. She doesn't ask questions. A pause. Then, and even if she did, what is she going to do? Another pause. Longer this time. Heavy. She needs us more than we need her. I closed my eyes. Just for a second. Not because it hurt, but because it confirmed something I had been avoiding for years. I wasn't helping them survive. I was making it possible for them to use me. "And the rest of the money?" Carol asked. "It's safe," my mother replied. "Separate, untouchable, untouchable." That word stayed with me, because suddenly, everything I had been sending, every sacrifice I thought mattered, felt replaceable, optional, irrelevant. I stepped back from the window, slowly, carefully, my phone still recording, capturing every word. But the real recording was happening somewhere deeper, in the part of me that finally stopped defending them. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't feel rage. I felt something much more dangerous. Distance. The kind that doesn't show up all at once. The kind that builds quietly, until one day, you realize you're already gone. I sat on my bed, phone in my hand. 3 recordings now, each one heavier than the last. Not because of what they revealed, but because of what they confirmed. This wasn't misunderstanding. This wasn't stress. This wasn't family being imperfect. This was intention, and I was the only one who didn't know it. Until now, I saved the files, backed them up, listened one more time, then I set my phone down and stared at the ceiling. My birthday was getting closer. They were preparing their version of the truth. Carefully, confidently, but what they didn't understand was that truth doesn't belong to the loudest voice. It belongs to whoever can prove it. And I was starting to collect more than enough. What I didn't know yet was just how far it went. Because the next recording was the one that changed everything. By the 4th recording, I stopped being surprised. Not because what I heard wasn't shocking, but because it started to make sense. That's the part no one tells you. The truth doesn't always hit like lightning. Sometimes, it settles in quietly and rearranges everything you thought you knew. The next Sunday, I didn't go in right away. I sat in my car for a few minutes, engine off, hands resting on the steering wheel. Not nervous, not scared, just aware. There's a difference. I opened my banking app, something I rarely did in detail. Not because I didn't care, but because I trusted. Or maybe because I didn't want to see transfers. Every month, consistent, predictable, thousands of dollars moving out of my account, into theirs. I scrolled further back. Months, years, patterns forming, numbers repeating. And then, something didn't line up. A payment I clearly remembered sending was followed by another request. For the same bill, same amount, different excuse. I stared at the screen, zoomed in, checked dates, cross-referenced. The accountant in me finally did what it was trained to do, verify. And what I found was simple, clean, undeniable. They had been asking twice, sometimes 3 times, for the same expenses. Small amounts, spread out, easy to overlook, impossible to notice if you weren't looking. I leaned back in my seat, exhaled slowly, not angry, not yet, because anger needs emotion. And what I was feeling was calculation. I walked into the house 10 minutes later. Same smile, same calm tone. "Hey, Mom." She greeted me like always. Warm, effortless, practiced. Dinner started. Conversation flowed. Nothing unusual, which made it worse, because now I could see the performance, every word, every reaction, every carefully placed moment of concern. Felt rehearsed. Halfway through dinner, Daniel brought up his car issues. Again. Transmission's acting up, he said, shaking his head, frustrated. I might need to get it checked this week. My mother looked at me. Not directly. Just enough. A glance. A signal. The kind they thought I didn't notice. How much do you think that'll cost? She asked him. Daniel shrugged. Could be 1,000. Maybe more. 1,000. I nodded slowly. Took a sip of water. Calm. Measured. Because I remembered something. 3 weeks ago. Same car. Same problem. Same number. Already paid. I didn't say anything. I didn't question it. Because this wasn't the moment. Not yet. After dinner, I stayed a little longer. Longer than usual. I helped clean. Moved slowly. Gave them time to forget I was still there. That's when it happened. My mother stepped outside to take a call. Daniel followed her. They stood near the side of the house. Their voices low, but not low enough. You already asked her for that, my mother whispered. I know, Daniel said. But she didn't say anything. A pause. Then he added, she never does. They both laughed. Soft, short, comfortable. Like this was normal. Like this was routine. Just don't overdo it, my mother said. We still need her. That word again. Need. Not love. Not appreciate. Need. Like I was a resource. A supply. Something to manage. I stood in the kitchen doorway, listening. My phone in my hand, recording everything. And for the first time, I felt something rise. Not explosive. Not loud. But steady. Controlled. The kind of anger that doesn't make you react. It makes you decide. That night, I didn't just organize the recordings. I organized the numbers, dates, amounts, requests, transfers, everything. Line by line, clean, clear, a pattern of behavior, not a mistake, not a misunderstanding, a system. And then I saw something I hadn't expected, a larger withdrawal from their account. Not mine, a transfer that didn't match any expense they had mentioned. I traced it, followed the timeline, and realized there was money moving that had nothing to do with survival, nothing to do with bills, nothing to do with anything they had ever told me. It was going somewhere else, and they didn't want me to know where. I stared at the screen, longer this time, because this was bigger. This wasn't just them taking from me. This was them hiding something, something deliberate, something important. I closed my laptop slowly, sat back, and let the silence settle. 4 recordings, pages of numbers, and a truth that was starting to take shape. But I still didn't have all of it. Not yet, because the next piece wasn't about money. It was about something far more fragile, something that once exposed couldn't be put back together. And I had a feeling I was about to find it. By that point, I thought I understood the pattern. Money, control, assumptions, a system built quietly over time. But I was wrong, because what I found next wasn't about money. It was about something much harder to measure. Trust. It happened on a Thursday, not a Sunday, not part of the routine, which is probably why it slipped through. Daniel had texted me earlier that day, said he needed help picking something up, a surprise for Ava. I almost said no. I had work, deadlines, a life I was starting to see more clearly. But then I thought about my niece, so I went. His driveway was empty when I arrived, which wasn't unusual, but the front door was unlocked. That was. I stepped inside, quiet, called out once. Daniel. No answer. The house felt occupied, not empty. There's a difference. I took a few steps forward. That's when I heard it. A voice, soft, laughing, not Daniel's, his wife Rachel, and she wasn't alone. I stopped. Instinct, not fear, awareness. Her voice drifted down the hallway, light, careless. You worry too much, she said. A man's voice responded, low, unfamiliar. He's going to find out eventually. A pause. Then Rachel laughed again. He barely notices anything she said. That sentence hit differently because I knew exactly who she was talking about. Daniel, her husband, the man who thought his life was just unstable, not broken. I moved closer, slowly, carefully. The bedroom door was slightly open, just enough. I didn't look inside. I didn't need to. Some truths don't require confirmation. You feel them. You recognize them. My phone was already in my hand, recording. Not because I planned it, because by now, it was automatic. The man spoke again. What about the money? Rachel's tone shifted. Not emotional. Practical. It's handled, she said. She keeps sending it. My breath caught. Just slightly. The man asked. Rachel replied, without hesitation. His sister. Silence. Not outside. Inside me. Because suddenly, everything connected. The extra money. The missing amounts. The unexplained transfers. It wasn't just being wasted. It was being used. For this. For us, Rachel added softly. A pause. Then, we deserve this. That word again. Deserve. It echoed the same way it had before. Different voice. Same justification. I stepped back. Slowly. Carefully. Because this was something else. This wasn't just betrayal. It was layered. Daniel was being lied to. My mother was manipulating the money. My father was hiding things. And now, Rachel was using what I sent to fund a life Daniel didn't even know existed. I walked out of the house, didn't close the door, didn't say a word, sat in my car, hands still, mind moving faster than it had in years. I didn't feel heartbreak. Not exactly, because this wasn't happening to me. But I felt something else. A strange kind of clarity. The kind that strips away every illusion at once. That night, I listened to the recording. Once, then again, Rachel's voice. Calm, certain. She keeps sending it. Like I was a background system. An automatic function. Not a person. Not someone who could choose to stop. I had 5 recordings now. 5 separate truths. Each one powerful on its own. But together, they formed something undeniable. A complete picture. Not of a broken family, but of a constructed one. Carefully maintained. Carefully hidden. Until now, I placed my phone on the table, looked at the screen. 5 files. 5 moments. 5 pieces of something that was about to come apart. My birthday was 3 days away. They were finalizing their plans. Inviting people. Preparing their version of the story. The intervention. The performance. The moment they believed would put me in my place. And for the first time, I understood something completely. They weren't wrong about one thing. I had been predictable. I had been quiet. I had been reliable. But they made one mistake. They thought that version of me was permanent. I picked up my phone, opened the recordings, and for the first time, I didn't feel like I was reacting. I felt ready, because what they had planned was an ending. But what they didn't realize was that I had already written something else, and it was going to begin the moment they asked me to sit down. The moment they thought they were in control. They had no idea how loud the truth was about to become. I arrived at 6:10, 10 minutes early, not because I wanted to be, because I needed to see it. The setup, the stage, the version of the story they had built. Without me, cars lined the street, more than I expected, neighbors, relatives, people I barely knew, people who knew me just enough to believe whatever they were about to hear. I sat in my car for a moment, engine off, phone in my hand, 5 recordings, labeled, ready, not shaking, not hesitating, just waiting. I stepped out, walked to the front door, opened it, and everything made sense. The living room had been cleared, furniture pushed aside, rows of folding chairs, facing forward, like a seminar or a trial. At the front, a single chair, facing everyone else, mine. There was a small table beside it, a box of tissues, placed carefully, intentionally, like they had already decided how this was going to end. My mother stood near the front, dressed neatly, calm, smiling, hosting. My father stood off to the side, holding papers, printed, organized. Daniel was adjusting a tripod, phone mounted, angle perfect, recording. Of course, I scanned the room. Familiar faces, curious ones, judging ones. And then I saw him, my boss, second row, arms crossed, watching. That was the moment. I understood just how far they had gone. This wasn't family anymore. This was reputation, control, exposure. I walked in, closed the door behind me, No one spoke. Not yet. I took my seat. Center. Facing them. 40, maybe 50 people. Looking at me. Waiting. My mother stepped forward. Picked up a small microphone. Tapped it once. Feedback. Sharp. Attention locked. "Thank you all for coming," she said. Her voice warm. Measured. Practiced. "We're here because we love Linda." A pause. Then, "But love sometimes means telling the truth." There it was. The script. She looked at me. Soft eyes. Carefully constructed concern. "Linda," she said, "you've been difficult. Not angry. Not harsh. Just controlled. You make people feel like they owe you. You use money to influence decisions. You create tension in this family." Each sentence, clean, simple, believable. If you didn't know the rest, my father stepped forward, unfolded his papers, 3 pages, typed, bullet points, dates, moments, patterns he called them. He read, from childhood to now, every story bent, just enough to make me the problem. People nodded, some slowly, some immediately. I watched their faces, not reacting, not defending, because I knew something they didn't. Truth has timing, and this wasn't mine yet. Daniel adjusted the camera, zoomed slightly. I saw the red light. Live. Of course it was live. My entire life being summarized for strangers, for views, for validation. My father finished, folded the pages, looked at me for the first time. "We raised you better than this," he said. Silence. Heavy. Waiting. All eyes on me. This was the moment they expected. Tears. Denial. Anger. Something they could point to and say, "See?" Instead, I took a breath. Slow. Even. And I spoke. "Can we talk privately?" Simple. Calm. Reasonable. My mother didn't even hesitate. Number. Firm. Immediate. "This needs to happen here." Of course it did. That was the whole point. I nodded. Once. Looked around the room. At every person who came, thinking they were witnessing truth. Then I reached into my bag, pulled out my phone, held it in my hand. Not high. Not dramatic. Just present. And I said, "Okay." A small pause. Then, funny thing is, I looked directly at my mother. "I've been recording too." Silence. Instant. Complete. The kind that feels physical, like pressure in the air. I didn't rush, didn't explain. I just pressed play. The first recording filled the room. My father's voice. Clear, unmistakable, talking about money. Hidden, unaccounted for. The room shifted. Not loudly, but enough. My mother turned toward him. Confusion. Real this time. Not rehearsed. I stopped it. No commentary. No explanation. Just moved to the next one. My mother's voice. Talking about the extra account. Laughing. Saying I wouldn't notice. That I never do. Gasps. Quiet. Sharp. Someone in the back stood up. Then sat back down. I didn't look. I pressed play again. Daniel? Talking about asking me twice. 3 times. For the same money. Laughing about it. The sound echoed differently now. Not harmless. Not normal. Ugly. I let it play longer. Let it settle. Then, the 4th. Rachel's voice. Soft. Careless. Talking about his sister. Talking about the money. Talking about us. A chair scraped loudly. Someone stood. Daniel turned. Too fast. Too late. I stopped it. The room was no longer focused on me. They were looking at each other. At him. At my parents. At the cracks spreading in real time. I still had one more. The one they never saw coming. The one that wasn't about money. Or lies. Or manipulation. It was about intention. I held my phone. Looked at my mother. And said quietly, "There's one more." And for the first time that night, she didn't look in control. She looked afraid. I pressed play. The last recording didn't sound loud. It wasn't dramatic. No shouting. No chaos. Just my mother's voice. Calm. Certain. Planning. "We do it on her birthday," she said. "We sit her down. Tell her she's the problem." A pause. Then Daniel's voice. "Should we record it?" And my mother, without hesitation. "Yes." Silence. Not the kind that fades. The kind that stays. The kind that forces people to sit inside it. And think. I didn't say anything after it ended. I didn't need to, because for the first time that night, no one was looking at me. They were looking at them. My mother stood still, the microphone still in her hand. But it meant nothing now. My father sat down slowly, like something inside him had just given out. Daniel stepped back from the tripod, eyes moving, searching for something that wasn't there anymore. Control. That's what he lost. Not me, not money. Control. The room began to shift, quietly at first. A whisper, a glance, then movement. One person stood, then another, not rushing, not dramatic, just leaving. Because once people see the truth, they don't argue with it, they distance themselves from it. I watched as the room emptied, not completely, but enough to feel the change, enough to understand. This wasn't going back. My boss stood up, adjusted his jacket, walked toward me, stopped just long enough to say, "I know who you are." Simple, direct. Then he left. That meant more than anything else that night. Not because I needed validation, but because something had been preserved. My name, my work, my reality, unaffected by their version of me. Rachel was gone. At some point, during the recordings, she had slipped out. Daniel noticed too late. Of course he did. He always did. My father didn't move. He stared at the floor, hands clasped, like he was trying to hold something together that had already fallen apart. My mother finally looked at me, really looked. Not as a daughter, not as a role, but as someone she didn't understand anymore. "Linda," she started. Her voice wasn't strong. It wasn't controlled. It was something else, unfamiliar. "This isn't what it looks like." I held her gaze, calm, steady. "It's exactly what it looks like." No anger, no raised voice, just truth. The kind that doesn't need emphasis. Daniel stepped forward. "You didn't have to do this," he said. There it was. Not an apology, not accountability, just blame. Shifted, redirected. I nodded slowly. "You didn't have to plan it either." That was the end of that conversation. Because there's a point where explanations stop working and consequences begin. I reached into my bag, put my phone away. Not because I was done, because I didn't need it anymore. Everything that needed to be heard had been heard. I stood up, the chair behind me, scraping softly against the floor. The same chair they had placed there, expecting me to break. I didn't. I looked around the room one last time, at what was left of it, at the people still sitting there, trying to process something they didn't come prepared to see. Then I spoke, clear, measured. "Starting tonight, a small pause. I'm done paying for everything." That landed differently, not loud, but final. My mother's expression shifted instantly. "You can't just, I said, still calm. "I already did. I let that sit, because this wasn't a threat. It was a decision, made long before tonight. You said I use money to control you," I continued. "So now, you're free." No sarcasm, no edge, just clarity. The kind that doesn't leave room for argument. No one responded, because there was nothing left to say. I picked up my bag, walked toward the door. No one stopped me. No one followed. And that was the quietest part of all. Outside, the air felt different. Cooler, lighter. Not because anything had been fixed, but because something had ended. I got into my car, closed the door, and for the first time in years, I sat there with nothing to calculate, no transfers, no responsibilities waiting, no invisible weight, just silence. The kind that doesn't feel empty, the kind that feels earned. My phone buzzed. A message from my niece. "Are you coming next Sunday?" I stared at it for a moment, then typed back, "Not this Sunday, sweetheart." A pause. Then I added, "But I'll always be here for you." Because boundaries aren't about leaving people behind. They're about choosing where you stand. I put my phone down, started the engine, and drove away. Not angry, not broken, just done. And for the first time in a very long time, that felt like freedom. If you step back and look at Linda's story, not as a daughter, but as an observer, something becomes very clear. This was never just about money. It was about boundaries. And more importantly, what happens when someone is never allowed to have them. In many families, especially the ones that look functional from the outside, there's often one person who carries more than their share. The reliable one, the quiet one, the one who fixes problems before anyone else even notices them. And over time, that role stops being appreciated. It becomes expected. Then it becomes exploited. Until one day, that person finally stops. And suddenly, they're called selfish, difficult, unrecognizable. But here's the truth. Most people don't say out loud. Setting a boundary doesn't destroy a healthy relationship. It reveals the unhealthy ones. Linda didn't break her family. She removed the part of the system that was holding it together. And what fell apart was never stable to begin with. So if you saw yourself anywhere in this story, if you've ever felt like you were the one holding everything together, ask yourself one question. At what cost? Because love, real love, doesn't require you to disappear to prove it. If this story stayed with you, take a moment to like the video. And if you want more stories that don't just entertain, but help you see things a little more clearly, go ahead and subscribe. You never know which story might be the one that finally helps you choose yourself.